Our goal is to graph the circle that we have the equation for, and in order to do that, we're going to rewrite the equation in standard form. That's going to allow us to identify the center of the circle and the radius. So to rewrite this in standard form, the first thing you want to do is take the number and move it to the other side. So I'm going to take this minus 12 and add 12 to both sides, and I now have that this equals 12. Okay, on the left-hand side, I want to order things, put the x's first and then the y's next. So I'm going to have x squared plus 4x, and I'm going to leave a little bit of space on purpose, and then the y's next. So I have y squared minus 6y, and then again, I'm leaving a little bit of space on purpose. Okay, the next thing I need to do is fill in this space that I've left. And to fill in these two spaces, we're gonna need a formula. And that particular formula is b divided by 2 squared. Now the b in this one is 4, so I wanna take 4 and divide it by 2 and square it. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 2 squared is 4. So I'm going to end up filling in this space here with the number 4. Okay, then filling in this space that I've created using that same formula, b divided by 2 squared, but in this case the b value is negative 6. So I'm going to take negative 6 divided by 2, which is negative 3, and negative 3 squared is positive 9, so I want to put a 9 here. So let's come down and jot down what we have so far. I have my x squared plus 4x, my blank space, my y squared minus 6y equal to 12, but I'm now going to fill in this space with the number 4, but I've just added 4 to the left side, and whatever I do to one side of the equal sign, I have to do to the other. So I'm going to add 4 on the right side as well, and then I'm going to fill in this space with 9. But whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. So since I've randomly added 9 to the left, I'm going to add 9 to the right. And on the far side here, 12, 4, and 9 make 25. So this just became equals 25. The next thing I need to do is factor x squared plus 4x plus 4 and factor y squared minus 6y plus 9. When I go to factor, I'm going to have perfect squares, and you can think of this if you want to, just factor it and do that, but if there is a big shortcut. It's not a coincidence that x squared plus 4x plus 4 factors to be x plus 2 times x plus 2, because this plus 2 right here happens to be the same as what this number was before I squared it. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and that is plus 2. But worst case, you can go ahead and factor that and you'll get the same thing. But if we use that pattern in this case here, we're thinking, what was this before I squared it? Negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. So I know that that is also going to be negative 3. If you don't remember that shortcut, again, you can just factor y squared minus 6y plus 9, and you'll find out as y minus 3 times y minus 3, and you can write it as y minus 3 quantity squared. Now that we have this format, we have standard form, let's just make a quick comparison. I'm going to move on down here. Making a quick comparison to find out the radius and the center. So this number represents the radius squared. So the square root of 25 is 5. And then what happens here is it's going to be the opposite of this number and the opposite of this number. So our center is going to be at negative 2, comma, positive 3. Negative 2, comma, positive 3. Now that I know the center and the radius, I can graph. And if I go back to up 3, there's my center. and then I create a circle with radius 5. So notice from the center to the outside of the circle, anywhere we look, I've drawn it so that it has a radius of 5. Okay, let's take a look at just one more quick example. It's actually easier than the previous one, but sometimes it's harder because you don't notice the shortcut that's available to you. I'm starting off once again by quickly moving over the number. And if I move over the number, this now equals 3. Let's write them in order. X is first, Y is next. So I end up with x squared plus 2x. I'm going to leave a little bit of space. And then I have just y squared, and there's nothing after that y squared. This is the part I'm talking about that ends up being pretty straightforward. But let's take a look at that front part first. I need to fill in that space. And so the formula I use to fill in that space is b divided by 2 squared. And so this one is going to be 2. So 2 divided by 2 squared. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 1 squared is 1. So I'm going to ultimately fill in that space with 1. Okay, so I've just rewritten this. I'm going to now fill in that space with 1. And then over here, whatever I do to one side, I've got to do to the other. So I'm going to add 1 to the right side. You might be thinking, why am I not doing anything with y squared? Well, our goal is to make it look like a perfect square plus a perfect square. So in this case right here, that y squared, we could just write that as y minus 0. And then when I factor this one, it's going to become x plus 1 times x plus 1. Not a coincidence, just as a reminder, what was the answer before I squared it? 2 divided by 2 is 1, so that's a 1. Otherwise, just factor that. Now that it is in standard form, I'm ready to identify the radius. The square root of 4 is 2. The center is the opposite, comma, this one. So negative 1, comma 0. And then once I have negative 1, comma 0, I am graphing, and notice I went back 1, up 0. There's my center. And then the distance from the center to the outside is 2. And so now my circle is graphed.